At any rate, this video remind me of Sydney Watson because she's often on about the problems with the way we treat children, the way we sexualize children. But, and I think this is related, it's also part of this general self-sabotage mentality where not only do we want to destroy the family, but we want to destroy the whole culture. Let's just kill ourselves. Let's get replaced. And while we're getting replaced, let's make sure it's Sodom and Gomorrah the whole way down. Let's just reenact the Bible, shall we? Let's talk to Sydney about this now. Sydney, are you there?
I am here.
How you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. You have kind of an American accent in your Australian accent.
Yeah, I do. I'm a dual citizen. So, American citizen born abroad.
I see. Well, just because you're born abroad doesn't mean you have to stay abroad your whole life. You can convert to male because gender is just a mental capacity. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, no, I could definitely. It'd probably work out in America actually right now. So
yeah,
that's a benefit.
I saw a thing on the news last night about a refugee. I think he's coming from Mexico and he's trans. And he's going up from Central America up through Mexico to become an illegal in America and then hopefully get all kinds of surgery and stuff because he can't get it down there.
Yeah, well, I don't think that a lot of those countries support the, whole transgender thing. I think this is a pretty new age concept that's predominantly in the West.
That's the funny thing about multiculturalism. Everyone likes the concept when it comes to food, but they don't realize things like the age of consent in Mexico is 12. It's illegal to be gay in almost all the countries in the Caribbean. So this culture you're importing is a lot less progressive than you think.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the thing. And I think that because of the differences between America and Australia, we're lucky because we're kind of isolated because we're like this little island in the middle of the ocean. But America, you're connected to Canada and you're also connected to Mexico and therefore, I guess by extension, the Central and South American countries. So you guys are in a difficult predicament compared to us.
Yeah, you're Alcatraz. You're an island. Perfect security.
Yeah, basically.
You've got a wall, and it's called a moat, and it's full of sharks. Now, that's always been the best thing. The best thing about Australia, I've always said, is their immigration policy. Even though it's getting more and more lefty in the island, they're still an island, and they still have pretty good immigration policy. But I feel like that's starting to change. Is there a climate of open borders happening down there?
Yeah, I guess yes and no. So I think that there's a sentiment in the country where basically a lot of Australians feel like the more immigrants we let in, the worse off our country actually is. And it's interesting because I'm interning at the moment at a radio station, and one of the topics today was about immigration and the amount of callers who phoned in absolutely furious about, the immigration in Australia and saying there's too many people because it's not sustainable. I mean, if you really think about it, the only places you can live are on the coastal cities. The center of Australia is really hot. It's really not the best place to be for a lot of us. So where are we going to put all these people? And I think in the last year, I think we brought in, or at least the population has grown by 400,000 people. That's a lot. It's just not sustainable in the long run.
Well, what about the types of people? Who's that politician that got in trouble recently for suggesting you take in white South African farmers? Peter Dutton. Peter Dutton?
Yeah.
Peter Dweeb. Now that's a problematic thing to say, and Pat Buchanan got in trouble for this way back in the 80s, I think. He said 1,000 Zulus would adapt to American culture a lot less well than 1,000 Englishmen. And I think that Australian politician is saying, look, these people are already very similar to our culture. Let's bring them in.
Yeah, and that's how I think a lot of Australians are feeling, because we do bring in a lot of people that are from the Middle East. In fact, most of the numbers are from the Middle East, they're from China, they're from India, and then actually the UK, interestingly enough. But I think that's probably more a result of the Commonwealth than anything.
Right.
But then what you find is that some of these people are non-integratables, like they don't assimilate very well into Australia. And therefore, as far as a lot of us are concerned, sometimes it might be more preferable to bring in people who are from traditionally Western or white countries.
Yeah,
which is
it's an uncomfortable truth, because I've noticed the blowback in Australia says, this guy wants to bring in white South African farmers. We've got all these refugees on all these islands and all these sort of Guantanamo bays surrounding Australia, and these people are living in squalor. And I look at that totally unsympathetically and I go, sorry, that's what happens when you try to illegally immigrate somewhere. You get stuck in a holding pen. It's called breaking the law. You know,
Yeah.
Mexico does it to Nicaraguans. Every country does it.
Well, that was the argument that a lot of people made when Peter Dutton did make his comments about the white South African farmers. They said, had those people come to Australia on a boat, you would have just straight off let them in. And no, he wouldn't have, because again, you're not coming here legally. You're not going through the processes that you should go through.
Right.
And therefore, no special treatment. So it's not a case of actual ethnicity or race. It has to do with the way in which you enter Australia. And a lot of us are very much for come to the country legally. Why would you come here on a boat? Well, we don't know who you are. We have no concept of if you're a criminal or your background or anything like that. So why would we let you in? This is the thing I always ask, is why would we let you in when we don't know who you are?
Yeah. Well, the truth is that race doesn't matter, but culture does matter. And look, if you're going to take in Middle Easterners, can we prefer Iraqi Christians? They are getting literally crucified. Children are getting crucified. And by the way, children are getting crucified, literally crucified with the farmers in South Africa. They've got that in common, remarkably sadistic violence. But I would prefer Christian refugees from the Middle East than Islamic refugees, because they don't not only do they not assimilate, but Muslims, wildly disproportionately, obviously not all, but a large percentage of Muslims seem to have sort of an animosity to the West when they come in here. They seem to want to set up fifth columns, and they, the Allah is above Australia in many ways.
Well, that's actually what they believe, though. I mean, that's basically the general concept of the religion is Allah is before everybody else, and Sharia law comes before the law of the actual land that you're in. So I think that, our Muslim population currently, I think, is about 2.5%. So it's not massive, but it's big enough that you start to see some changes. So I know that, I've talked about this before, but, we have all these racial councils, we have new legislation coming in that specifically targets people from actually making comments about certain ethnicities, and particularly actually about Muslims. And it's really disconcerting because right now we're having our freedom of speech impacted upon because of the people entering this country. And to me, that's just really wrong. That just shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, and it's funny that is happening in Canada and Britain too. It's almost like it's a genetic trait where Westerners are so worried about being mean to people that they make it illegal to criticize them. All right,
definitely.
We're running out of time here, but let's order immigrants. I'll tell you my order, all right? Top of the line, Western Christians. I don't care what race they are. They tend to be white mostly. Number 2, I like Indians. Not Pakistanis, not the Muslims, but the Indians. Their religion is silly. It's like snakes playing the flute, and there's a blue elephant and some giant, donkey man and the blue kids on flying carpets. That's cute. And they start new businesses and stuff. They don't take jobs, they make jobs. And this could be because they come from a commonwealth, really, originally. So they're used to, cricket and tea and classical music. So that's number 2.
Some of them.
And then
some of them, at least.
Chinese people don't hate us, but they don't assimilate. They send their kids to Chinese schools. They speak Chinese to each other. They tend to not get patriotic. And then last out of those 4 would be Muslims. And the reason I'm not saying like Mexicans and stuff, because we're talking about Australia. I think that's the order that you should pull them in. What do you think?
Well, as someone because obviously the population of Chinese here is very, very large, I do find that they do assimilate quite well. But you said, they are kind of insular in a lot of ways. But I would say it sounds so bad, but I would probably preference the Chinese a little bit more. But that's only because they're just very, they're not really looking to sort of impose a belief system on you. And they're very, very relaxed. They do walk in crowds, though, which can kind of get quite irritating in the city. But
it's hard to get
besides that, yeah, exactly. No, but besides that, I think they do assimilate reasonably well.
It's interesting that so often the children of immigrants will assimilate because the West is the best. So they hear rock and roll, and they see girls in bikinis, and they see Budweiser, and they go, I like this culture more than my parents' boring culture. But Muslims are one of the few where you're starting to see the children more radical than their parents. Like the Sarnev brothers here in Boston. Their parents are kind of secular. And they grew up lifting weights and listening to Van Halen. And then the next thing you know, they want to blow up the marathon because they've been radicalized.
Yeah, it's true. And I don't actually know why that is. I wouldn't have, I haven't looked into it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, even you see it in Australia, you see these people whose parents have come here to work hard to sort of make a better life for themselves. And their kids end up considerably more extreme and, like you said, more radicalized than their parents ever could have been. And I don't know where that's coming from. And I don't know why it's sort of being permeated, I
think
guess.
It comes from the teachers. And these Marxist teachers, they sit there with the kids and they go, America sucks, America sucks, America sucks. And then eventually the kids go, actually, I come from a country that burns the American flag. Maybe I'll become more patriotic to Chechnya or Georgia or wherever the hell they were from. And the next thing you know, they become radicalized by teachers. Would you say, last question, would you say that the public schools there in Australia are left-wing? Do they talk about how you killed the Aboriginals and how it's a genocide and it's stolen land and all that crap?
Yes. Obviously, it's been a while since I was in primary school, but based on things that my friends who have children have told me and just sort of what I've seen and heard, yes, they're very, very left-wing. And I think that, part of the thing is too, because obviously we colonized Australia, there is this whole argument, and children are now being sort of indoctrinated to believe that the white man, the early settlers were, these horrible racist people that came in and murdered all these poor Aboriginals. And it's just such an odd thing to teach little children who have no concept of what actually happened or, what was behind it or anything like that. So, yeah, definitely. And a lot of the things that get taught in schools really shouldn't be taught to little children. We're having a whole issue at the moment with this, Safe Schools program, which is totally different topic, but, I suppose the radicalized gender teachings, and it's just, I just go, what kind of children are we going to churn out at the end of the day? At least I got away from it.
We just watched a video in England where some drag queen gets up in a mini skirt and high heel shoes, a man who looks like me, but in a mini skirt, talking about how if you want to feel sexy and you want to wear this, you should wear this. To children, like 6-year-olds. And I'm looking at that going, I don't want girls to see a woman in a mini skirt and be told you can wear stilettos and be a dirty little slut.
Yep.
They have boys in makeup before the age that girls can wear makeup for. It's a bloody mess.
True. Yeah. It's America's at least not, you guys aren't so bad. I think we're sort of definitely leading the charge along with Britain. We're definitely really close behind them. So I don't know, you guys really have got to get a handle on it before you end up like us, because it's not a nice place to be.
Well, as long as you can keep that watery border, there's still hope for Australia.
Yeah, sort of, maybe. Maybe if we can get rid of the socialist governments that seem to have a stranglehold, then we'll be a little bit better off. Who knows? It's a pipe dream.
We'll see. Well, let's keep checking in with you and mark the progress of that wonderful little island, the last bastion of masculinity in the Western world.
You hope, yes. Let's hope.
Bye.
All right, see you, Gavin.